All right, now this question here is almost, so ridiculous, unless you're really, really totally ignorant. You understand? Got a lot of erroneous information or some sort of envy. You understand? When some people are saying that Abraham, Moses, David, and Solomon never existed. There's many folks that will tell you that they never existed based on their school of thought and the limitations. You understand? The factual limitations and the evidence limitations of many of these schools of thought. They would try to put forward this idea that Abraham, Moses, David, and Solomon and the people of the Bible or the book never existed. You understand? And on the surface, remember, we have to put this into context, you understand, and to get meaning by putting it into correct context. Putting into correct context, white Abraham, white Moses, white David, white Solomon, you understand, that you see in these man-made movies and films and in Renaissance church paintings, so forth and so on. They never existed. So when you look at any of these religious so-called pictures, you understand that white supremacy and white domination theology boasting of Abraham, of Moses, of David, and of Solomon, of those so-called individuals, well, those people that you're seeing in those pictures, and the History Channel uses them a lot, and a lot of these documentaries that come on cable also use them a lot. Well, they never existed. Those are just man-made paintings. Those are man-made idols, like the Bible says, the idols of one's hand. These are the images that they have put across on the whole world to fulfill what the Bible says about the God of this world, you understand, as well as the old serpent, you understand, the deceiver, the accuser, you understand, of the brethren. You understand, the accuser of the brethren, the ones that basically whitewashed Christianity, whitewashed almost all of Christianity, creating these various isms and schisms in the Christianities, you understand, took over Judaism, you understand, for the most part, you understand, until in the late 18 or so hundreds, early 1900s, you understand, a discovery was made, an uncovery was made of the Beta Israel, you understand, of Ethiopia, of the so-called black Jews of Ethiopia. And at the same time, these connections were already being made with black people over here in the West. And there were many black people, different congregations, different Christian denomination groups that began to put it together that the message that they were preaching and teaching, or were taught to preach and teach with the white Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, you understand, actually had more resonance with the black faces and black people that they were preaching this to. So many of these early Christian leaders that were able to break the yoke of white domination theology began to put two and two together. And then later on with Joseph, Jack Halevi, and there was a lot of different ones who went to Ethiopia, different Jews who, non-ethnic I'm speaking of, they went to Ethiopia and they made this discovery of the Beta Israel of Ethiopia. You understand? As well as a society, that sort of holy ancient society that they first encountered when they came into Ethiopia was straight out of the Bible. You understand? They began to tour around Ethiopia, and they noticed as they went around different areas of Ethiopia that there were actual places that bore the same names as the places in the Bible. You understand? They found ancient manuscripts and documents dating hundreds and even thousands of years previously. You understand? That were already written, from thousands of years ago. They found a connection that they never thought existed when they reached Ethiopia. You understand? When they were able to penetrate the mountains, as the Psalm says. You understand? As the mountains, surround Jerusalem. Because many were not able to penetrate that. So Ethiopia was an incubator, you understand, to bring to us in this modern time, you understand, evidence of who we be, of truly what our bloodline, racial relationship, historical relationship is. And the most ironic thing is that many modern day Ethiopians don't even have this knowledge. They don't even recognize that they wasn't taught this. They don't really recognize that connection. That's why many of them reject, you understand, us over here in the West when we say that we are Ethiopian as well. Because you see, in the Bible, There's the prophecy that he says, I will give, you understand, that the Most High would give Egypt, you understand, and Saba or Saba as a ransom for us. That he would give Egypt, ancient Egypt, you understand, and Ethiopia as a ransom for us. And who's the us he's speaking about? The Zer'a Ya'aqob, the seed or the race. You understand, the racial, you understand, the genealogy, or we can say those who have the genetics of biblical and prophetic Israel, that he would give Egypt and Ethiopia for us. And what do we find in the modern times? Where's most of our connection as black people? You understand, when we're seeking that culture, that ancient culture that wasn't taught to us in school and wasn't taught to our ancestors, we link Egypt. We see clearly that black people have done great things historically in time. You understand? We link to Ethiopia. And by linking to Egypt and Ethiopia, it's very interesting, because Egypt, we're linking to more of the material side of the advancement. You understand? Because Egypt was like, in that day and time, was like what America is in this day and time. Everybody comes here because of the openness, because of the chance or the opportunity or the dream, you understand, of bettering their lives or feeding their families who are elsewhere in the world. That's why the Bible calls America, in a sense, spiritual Egypt, especially Washington, D.C., because it's built on that same principle. Now when we reach Ethiopia, we find the more spiritual side, and we see the link between Egypt and Ethiopia, even with the river Nile. So all these things are right in your face. Now, for one to say that Abraham, that Moshe or Moshe, David or Dawit, and Shlomo or Solomon never existed, would be like saying, well, the Ethiopians, for thousands of years, they've been lying to themselves, and other people who met them and bore witness to their story over thousands of years, going all the way back to 70 AD, were also lying. That means that everybody was lying. The Ethiopians were lying, the Romans were lying, and there's no proof to it. But then that would make like, well, what we're living right now is not even happening. That would say like, well, slavery didn't happen. It's like for a white person to say, you know, slavery didn't happen, you're making it up. Martin Luther King didn't exist. You understand? It's like they want to tell us maybe in another couple of years that, well, Haile Selassie never existed. He was just a figment of our imagination. Somebody made him up. It's the same sort of garbage. So Abraham, Moshe, Muse, Dawit or David, and Solomon, as well as the patriarchs and the matriarchs, they lived and they existed, you understand, and the righteous still live, you understand, to this very day. You understand? So to reject that, you understand, is to really fall right into the trap that they have laid for you. You understand? However, on the other hand, you understand, white Abraham, white Moses, white David, like the David they have, that Michelangelo statue, so forth and so on, white Solomon, and the white, so-called whitewashed versions of the prophets, the apostles, and the Holy One, well, that is a figment of one's imagination. You understand? Abraham the leper, Isaac, and Jacob never existed. You understand? However, the black Abraham, or Abraham who is black, the Yitzhak who is black, the Yaakov and Israel which is black, existed and still exists to this very day. You understand? Many of the zeitgeists and others who are out there putting out this propaganda and everything, it's all because they know, you understand, that the truth is coming out. You understand, the truth is coming out from all sort of directions. It's found out that the ancient Chinese, you understand, were also so-called Africans. You understand? In other words, we're black people. We've been telling people for years that they are the Edomites, Esau, and the Mongolians, so forth and so on. Don't you see the sign? They live by the sword. Why we like to watch these Chinese and Japanese movies? A sword. It's like the sword is their blessing. The sword and the samurai and the Bushido and the shogun, and all, the sword becomes their heritage. And that's what was given to our brothers. That's what we say, the Asiatic black man. When we say Asiatic black man, we're saying Yaakov, you understand? Yaakov, you understand? And Esau or the Idumean, so forth and so on. You know? So that question about, you know, did Abraham, Moses, David, and Solomon even exist? You understand? It's factually incorrect. But if you're saying the whitewash versions, well, the whitewash versions, you understand? And that's the truth of it. The whitewash versions are man-made, are the figment of one's imagination, one's biases, and it's part of this whole racial conspiracy, biblical prophetic conspiracy that we are in the midst of in these last days and time.